Stay young, keep your wheels in motion. You got everything that you need. Stay young with your rock and rollin'. All the best things in life are free.
You know,
I'll actually
has,
have
any,
a seat I can sit on.
has anyone ever told you look like Jock Sutherland?
Oh, I'll take that.
Got a Jock Sutherland vibe.
No, but who did say? Someone said I looked like Dennis Quaid, but I think that's when I was younger. Now I don't know what I look like, but got some miles on the old mug. Okay. Now let's see if we can. Here's our little Moroccan moment.
Cool.
Thanks for your patience while I get myself arranged. Okay, I'm arranged.
Tell me a little bit about this photo I saw of you on a massive, solid, what I would consider, I don't know, you tell me, but it looks like a 10 to 12 foot wave and you're pulling into the tube somewhere up there. No need to name names, but man, that is a beastie barrel on your Instagram. That is, I would be stoked to say that was me, man. Good wave.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that was there's in moments like that, there's so many there's such a backstory to that one moment in terms of just kind of where I am in my surfing life, the board I was riding, the circumstances that led up to being on that particular wave. I guess I can start with that. That was the end result of about 50 minutes, 50, of paddling. It was just, it was a really big, pretty historic swell and real pretty nicely formed. Some of them were just big kind of monster mush things, just kind of rolling across the whole point, but a number of them would really hone and have a nice bowl. And there's a couple of different techniques you can do paddling out at Rincon on a big day. One is to go off the back beach, but it's got like on that day, it was kind of like a Waimea shore pound, so I tried that at first and I made it eventually, but like, fortunately I didn't wear any of them on the head because they were just like guillotines hitting the sand, just, or knock your eyes out of your head. Really scary. I paddled out on that, the story behind that wave, I paddled out at the river mouth and I kind of went through a whitewater, paddled, kind of broke through another one, and then just 8-10 feet of whitewater coming at me. I was like, forget this, just threw the board and just got swept. And I got about 3 of those. And then I was down in the cove before I knew it. And an old timer once said to me, on a big day, what you should do is actually paddle like out to sea, away from the point, which makes sense. The current's taking you, and just keep paddling until you're in that deep water. And then, so with that kind of echoing in my mind, I did that. But the only thing is, there were these crazy ones that there's a shoal that I didn't know well, I did know existed because we got that giant swell with all the weather was it just last year? About 3/4 of a mile out, you remember the famous Greeno story of waves breaking out there. We were seeing waves capping out there and rolling all the way through. So Rincon proper was almost like a reform, but as you say, it was like a 12-foot reform. Like the whitewater was on top of a swell, and then it would feel the bottom, and then So it took me a long time. I was way out there, just green, and that kind of the layers of the ocean going like that. You would go under a swell and then, and just, and you think you're at the top of the point, but there's waves breaking further out and further up. So I just kept going, and I was on sport. It's very San Diego in its DNA. It's kind of like a speed egg. I mean, I flatter myself, but like a kind of fry Donald Takayama sort of egg shape, just I try and make them real clean. And then I put these 8 gutters, just deep channels, and a single fin with a Smith Parrish fin. The fin is super neutral because of all the jazz going on with the channels. I want that rudder in there. And it worked really well to have that big hefty board to handle that water, kind of like when you're surfing in Hawaii or just bigger surf. In fact, there were only about 25 guys spread all over the point, and half of them were on shortboards, and they weren't even in the conversation. It's just, you could be a good surfer, but it just wasn't getting the job done the way the water was moving. So I finally get way out there, and another the 100th set of the day taps over on that outer shoal, and it's like another big gob of whitewater on top of a big swell kind of coming at me. And it was like, I always replay, I'm like pretending, my whole life is I'm pretending I'm like Derek Doner or one of those awesome guys at Waimea, standing on their board and diving off, like so I had like my own, like, I've been doing that since I was a little kid. Like, I see a shadow and pretend I'm in the surf movie. I'm out of my mind. And so I did that. I didn't need to, but it was just kind of like raw, big waves. And then I came up, kind of got myself together. And then in that whitewater track, all bubbly and weird, there's just a big swell that hadn't quite hit the reef out there. So it was fully intact, I guess you could say. And I was like, this one. And I spun and went and just had a nice kind of like through that foam, really nice driving fast drop, pretty nice bottom turn. And then like just a big kind of paneling, arcing turn. And then I came through that whitewater track into green water, and then I was just kind of standing upright on the board and not doing a damn thing, but going mock, just skimming across this wall and looking down. I was well above the river mouth when I took off. And at this point, when I'm standing there skimming across, like going fast, I'm looking down and watching the whole bend of the swell come into the upper or river mouth into the cove. And I was thinking like Makaha Bowl or something. Like, I'm skimming along. I'm like, yeah, it's all coming together. This one's good. And it started to feel the bottom and stand up. And so I kind of like, as I'm skimming, I sort of like paneled over on the rail a little bit, and then mid-face kind of engaged one big bottom turn, whoa, and then stepped forward and was just like, give it, whatever it's going to be. I'm going to rush this bowl and then maybe get a bank. But as I hopped forward to like commit to running the bowl, I saw it just go, like way out in front of me, way the heck out there. And I was like, one thing to do, and then I think that's that moment where I'm just like, whoa, and the thing comes over and it's just a chamber, just boom, and so dark and chocolatey, and way out in front there's this little eyeball, and I'm like, point to the light, like, Joel Tudor, put your arm where you want to go. I'm kind of doing this number, and it gassed inside, like, I'm like, oh, it's still going. It's breathed again. And then second one. And I'm like, maybe. And I just got kind of vaporized into the ether, and then dragged underwater, like in a huge column of whitewater, skimming the cobblestones. I got a tiny little slice on my wrist, and washed into the cove. And, my buddies on the beach were like, sick,
That's amazing. What a great story. And what an all-time day of days up and down the coast. I'm assuming that was like the 27th of December or the 28th, one of those 2 days that was all time.
Yeah.
What?
That day was definitely the peak as well.
Yeah. Did you go back out after that, or were you like, okay,
that was my 6th wave of the day, and it wasn't really quite on dark yet, but it was late in the day. And let's see, I had 3 paddle outs, and I think anyone who was surfing that day would go, that's good, because the paddle out was, some people got really lucky and cut right out and it was no big deal, but it was big enough and a big enough playing field that there was no like paddling out and sitting and waiting for the wave. There was no sitting. It was all paddling the whole time. So I was good.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It was quite an exciting time. Now
Well, down your way.
get, well,
I know.
I was going to say, I get anxiety about not making it out, not about actually getting out and catching or riding the waves, which is the easy part. It's about not getting out when it's that big, especially, well, it's very similar to huge Rincon where you could do the walk of shame. And a lot of people do. And by the way, there's no shame in that. It's just a lot of it is timing. So do you have that anxiety sometimes when it's that big, when it's Mac Daddy and there's guys that are just, standing on the rocks after getting denied?
Yeah. I'm so glad that you brought that up because for me, there's two levels of anxiety, but both of which I don't know how to deal with the one, but the other, I just felt like, well, I'll say it. The one level of anxiety is, the big waves are coming and you're like, it's going to be pumping. And then I'm just starting to think just the stage of life I'm at. I'm like, on the one hand, I'm gung ho. On the other, I don't want to get injured or God forbid worse. I got a family to come home to, who need me. So I can't just be, oh, he was a hard charging guy, like, yeah, he left 2 kids, so there's that. But then the other thing that like took some little bit of surrender when I first tried to paddle out, I attempted the Waimea shore pound option and absolutely got my ass handed to me and sort of blasted back to the beach. And I stood there huffing and puffing before I had even, got out. And I had this, it was almost existential. I was like, whoa, I really want to get out there, but maybe I can't. And like physically I cannot. I couldn't deal with those waves, especially on that board, but I wouldn't want to be anywhere near it. It would almost be worse on a short board because then you could get in a position where, And so the thought I had was, well, if I can't physically, then the ocean calls it. Like, I'm not meant to be out there. And so I had that little kind of like, I don't know. I know what this is, but it was like some kind of appointment, reckon with age and all that, but I was like, well, so I stood in the rocks and kind of watched from my window and again, and I got lit up again. But for some reason, I like picked up my board, like reeled in the leash, came around and just put my head down and just like, and made it. But then I got to the lineup and I was so just like breathing to hear, and a perfect big one came and I was side of everybody. I was in the spot and I was too gassed to go. And that kind of tripped me out too. I was like, geez, just spin and go and work it out later, but then as someone else pointed out to me, let's say you do that, you're already fully gassed and you spin and go. Cause a lot of times when it's bigger, I know you've experienced this, like you get to the lineup and ideally you want to sit there for 5 or 10 minutes and kind of get acclimated and see what's running, how it's working. But isn't it the case you get there and 30 seconds later the best wave of the day that you would have comes and it's like, yeah, you've only been out there 30 seconds. Are you going to go or not? Because here it is. So maybe the way to deal with that is to really have a game plan ahead of time, really see it ahead of time, so that when you do get out there, if that wave comes when you would rather have 10 minutes to acclimate, you got, 13 seconds. That's what you get and you go, Seems to happen a lot, on big, really good.
Yeah. Be careful what you wish for type of situation, Are you doing anything to stay in shape besides surfing?
Well, yeah, I have 3 cups of instant coffee.
Yeah, I hear you.
And I stand in a box and boards all day. I'm fit as a fiddle. Such a smart ass. Let's see. Yeah, not really. I walk a little bit, pull some weeds. I probably should. Got, I'm all, you probably, I know you're quite fit. Surfing on the one hand, I feel like gives us a strong heart in all senses of heart, and good wind and all that, but it's a lopsided activity, isn't it? Like I feel my back's all like this, and yeah. So I really I'm so inspired by Felipe Pomar and that just the idea of surfing into your life. Did you happen to see that clip of Rusty Miller somewhat recently surfing? I guess it would have been where does he live? He lives in Byron, I think, and he surfed this 4-foot wave just so beautifully on a big old glider. It's like rising up and falling with it and in trim line and just cooking. It was beautiful surfing, beautiful. And I know he's been around through the eras,
Yeah, for sure. What about,
so I want to be like that. So yeah.
that's interesting because I'm always fascinated by people who stop surfing. Rusty Miller's not one of those guys. Have you thought about your last wave?
I'm sure like our last breath, it comes upon us, thief in the night kind of business, do you know when it's your last wave? I mean, maybe if you opt to say that was the session, I'm 60 years old and I've been surfing since I was 10. I'm on to this phase of my life. I guess that would be a way.
Does that scare you?
I don't think it scares me. I mean, I've got fears for sure. I think in it if you don't, in life, it's just there's a lot that comes at us in this, right? But as far as like the last wave or quitting, I don't at this point. I'm going to be 55 in the spring, and I just enjoy surfing so much, and I can see I've made a couple of boards. I'm glassing them right now that are like 9 foot. They're out of the Ross and Blank, the 9.3A. So they've got this like sunset beat rocker, but I put like a Pat Kern style nose on them. Just they're neutral, they're clean, and they would allow, I think, that Rusty Miller style of surfing, like maybe just back from center or in the center of the board and just kind of hips and positioning and flow. And man, it doesn't take much. I like riding all kinds of waves, even the little crumbly, cute little guys, So
Yeah.
if I can do it, I'd like to do it. I know an old timer here in Ventura who said, man, his hips, cold water, and it's cold at, when this wind is coming out of the Topa ranges, and sometimes there's a snowpack up there. So it's like, 40 degrees in the morning and the water's 52. He said his hips are really killing him, and sometimes a little twinge or something. And so I can see the guys might go post up down somewhere tropical, and keep at it that way. It's more friendly.
Yeah, for sure. A friend of mine said, don't surf in water that's colder than your age. And there might be some truth to that.
Oh, man, I guess I better pack up and move on.
Tell me about surfing Rincon on normal days, 4 to 5 to 6 foot days. Are the carp guys still kind of owning the point? Is that still, do they still have a stranglehold up there?
Yes, and I wish it were tighter. Shout out the carp boys. Definitely get theirs, and it's not vicious. It's not, there's no violence. It's just it's an element of superiority. They're from there. They know it. It's like it's pretty amazing. The local knowledge. You would think Rincon's a machine. Like, what's there to it? It's a perfect point wave, wait and jump on one. But it's like out of a set of 3 or 4 waves, there's one that really does it. They're all good, but one of them really does it. And typically, it's I don't know if I start throwing out names, it's not that I'm like not wanting to throw out names. I just wouldn't want to inadvertently miss somebody by calling somebody else out, but they know
Yeah.
who they are. Most of the crew, it's a self-referential thing, but it's pretty impressive, to how well they know that wave. But that said, it's an accessible and wave that if you have a game face and some paddling ability, then this is one thing that I'm struggling with. There's a couple folks who seem to I don't know, maybe bring ball mentality to the thing, not like, and so they'll paddle really hard, and they kind of seem to be in the spot and like, oh, you're coming up with another one, and then they're doing like the and I'm to go into all the aspects of what I'm about to say, but they'll go into this like double pump thruster spastic routine, and the thruster's an awesome surfing design. I'm not here as the like retro guy to say, oh, thrusters suck, or the modern guys suck. That's not true. They rip. But a person who has style, strength, flow, and precision can express that. It can be yoga, beautiful yoga on a shortboard, like someone like my friend Dan Malloy. As I was telling him, I was watching him surf recently, and I'm like, it's yoga. It's like kind of clicked. I was like, oh, old guy. Not that Dan's old, but he's not as old as I am. But he's been at it for so long, but his surfing is so free and beautiful. And you think about someone like Tom Curran on a shortboard, it's beautiful surfing, but for the average Joe, he can sort of see the videos and kind of try and do it his way, and there's a whole lot of wanking going on. And so it's a little bit galling to me, and again, this is about me, so why should I be galled? It's just surfing. But I put a lot of value on style, on experience, on respect, on aloha, on a lot of these things that constitute any kind of approach to surfing. So I see the guy come out, and far be it for me to claim local status at Rincon. I know I've been talking Rincon, and I got that big wave, and everyone in this community has, without fail, been very kind to me, as someone who's been living here for, I don't know, 12 years or 15 years or something, not that long, somewhere between 12 and 15 years. My daughter's 12 when she was little. So I guess it is 12 years. So I don't want to err on that side and be like the Johnny come lately Rincon local. I'm not trying to play that game. That said, I've been surfing joint for 12 years, and I know who's who, and I'll see these guys, and I don't maybe recognize their face, and then they're playing like 54th Street games at Rincon, like I'm not confrontational, but then maybe make sure I'm gonna go, and so it's kind of a fine line, where do you, because far be it for me to say how someone else should surf, but then like you're in a restaurant and someone's talking too loud, or bumping into people or making people uncomfortable. What do you do? At what point do you go, hey, dude, maybe not have another IPA? I can settle it down. But then he's going to want to scrap. And then what,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's tough. It's a tough gig.
Sometimes there's no good outcome. Yeah.
There's no good outcome.
Tough gig, surfing elder.
I mean, the bottom line is that there's a lot of guys from down south that go up to Rincon to surf in the winter. I mean, guys from down here in San Diego drive to Rincon. Of course, guys in LA are going to go up there. And so, yeah, it's a tough gig if you're a local boy there, and you got to see all these, guys that are just kind of flying in. It is what it is. It's, at the end of the day, luckily, as we get older, I know I can't speak for you, but I only need a few waves and I'm good.
I'm that way too. Yeah.
Tell me this.
Definitely.
It seems like let's shift a little bit into surfboard design. It seems as if the round pin twin fin has been sort of our surfboard du jour, if you will, for the past couple of years. Everyone's making these really beautiful round pin kind of mid-lengthy 6'6" twin fins, and
Yeah.
they're fast and they're incredible. Now, what are your thoughts on that design?
You know, when I first saw Torrin Martin, I think like a lot of us, I think the first time I ever saw him was footage of him surfing Cloudbreak, and he was doing his little garden gnome squat on the nose of a, you know, on one of those boards. Just, what is this thing this man is doing? It was kind of like when I first saw surfing on Elias. I was just like captivated and just really thought it was something. And then I started to see the rest of his surfing and started to see these boards from Simon Jones morning of the, and it was kind of like a light bulb moment. And I remembered, and I know you remember this, I thought of Kevin Reed and the Pearson Arrow surfboards circa 78, 4 mile, Santa Cruz, no hands, 4-foot airs, like boom, you know, twin fin pintails.
Yeah.
And I was like, that, oh, and then the channels, oh, Aussie Magic, I'm all in. And I, you know, and I've been shaping surfboards, you know, since like 95, but always kind of keeping a day job and trying to figure it out. It takes a long time, you know. And at the time, so this was about 5 years ago, I think, when all this started to pop. And anyway, I was all in. I saw it, and I had a shaping bay up at the farmhouse we were renting before we bought this place. And I was like, yeah, that I love that surfing. I love the ethos of that design. I think twin fins in general, I like to think of them as two single fins side by side, because, you know, it's one fin that's doing the work, you know, at any given time. I mean, I'm sure the other fin has an effect. The tip is in there, but if you're really shredding, it's fully out of the picture. It's one fin. So then, you know, and then how does that inform single fin design is the ancillary or the continuing thought for me. But as far as that round pin channel bottom twin, love it. It's killer. I was all into it, and I'm moving on. I'm happy to make those boards for people. And it's just a subtle thing. There's not, I can't even point to an element in it that has me going, well, I like it, but it's not even that.
I think I can actually.
Oh, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah. Well, let me chime in real quick on a couple of things. First of all, Kevin Reed in Santa Cruz. I'm not sure who made his boards, but I know that Joey Thomas up there was making those twin fin, and they weren't round pins. They were more like round tails. They were pretty wide.
Yeah, no,
they weren't
Joey,
like, you know, Brewer pintails. They were like, you know, California round tails. So Joey Thomas for sure. And I'm not sure if Bob up there, Pearson was making those for Kevin Reed or not, but I know that Joey Thomas was making them.
Maybe it was JT. If I've misspoken,
Well, I don't know either. Well, yeah. Somebody else can inform us. I just know that Joey was making those boards because I would see him down here in San Diego.
He's still making killer boards in Santa Cruz.
And the other guy, especially here, was Gary McNabb. Gary McNabb was making those twin fins right before Simon showed up with the thruster. Those were kind of that there was like a 6 or 8 month period where it was like that thing was insane, and then all of a sudden the thruster just took over the world.
No looking back.
And so then the second thing is to sort of try to find a moment that we're like, this board is great. This twin fin round pin is incredibly fast and incredibly loose, and it really surfs well. However, me personally, when I'm out on the shoulder with all that speed, it spontaneously combusts when I try to bring that board back into the source. So I have a problem with the roundhouse cutback. And this brings me to my next question for you, which is, and I think this is going to happen. I think surfboard design is cyclical. We're at that point where it's like cyclical. Like we were onto the twin fin round pin. Before that, we were on the fish. Then the mid-length was mixed in there somewhere. And this all kind of homogenized into a mid-length twin fin round pin. Mm-hmm. What's the next cycle? Understanding what the cycle was like in 81.
Yeah.
Before the thruster. Like, does that inform us?
I I'm I think so. My view is this, that there's, you probably know this photo too. There's a photo in the Surfer's Journal of Simon Anderson just about to paddle out, and he's got a single fin under his arm, but it's the thruster like a month before it became a thruster. And so that's where the plan shapes were going. Again, like I said earlier, the thruster's an insane design, and there's a reason it has been the core of high performance surfing since Simon invented the thing. But I think it's also true that we went all in on thrusters and forgot everything else. Single fins, twin fins, just left it in the dust. And there's obviously been some pockets and some guys who held on to their vision through that. But I wonder, if you just think about all the evolution of design the thruster itself has gone through, to like, what was Andy Irons riding at the top of his career versus what Jack Robinson is riding today. They're different surfboards. So how could we find the nuance in a the Will Jobson style Twinser, which JT.
I think you just nailed it. That's sort of my
that's where you're going.
That's where we're going, I think, is the Twinser. Because if you look at it, we went from, MR and the twin fin, and then the round pin twin fin, and everyone was enthralled by the speed and the maneuverability of the twin fin, but we were also kind of put off by some of the spontaneous combustion that was happening with too much speed that we couldn't control. The rails were maybe too boxy, whatever. Yeah. And then we went, oh my God, Holy Grail is here, the thruster. Thank you, Simon. We're back to power surfing and surfing off of our back foot or whatever, off of a center fin surfboard.
Yeah.
But Simon, it's not quite as loosey-goosey and speedy as the twin fin. And so what happened is Glenn went and made a quad fin, and everyone started going on to the quad fin. Like those that were looking for something between the thruster and the twin fin were like, the quad fin is the answer. And of course, the quad fin back then, they were glass on fins. People had a problem with the fin placement. They all didn't work great. And so that kind of had its moment and went by the wayside. But I think that what we're all searching for in the next cyclical moment that we're going to have here is more control, the same loosey-goosey feeling of the twin fin, but with more control. In the past, we went to the thruster and to the quad, but I think the answer is the Twinser. And I'll shut up. This is your interview, not mine.
You're a surfboard scholar, and the connections you have, you are well informed. It's really interesting to hear your thoughts on that. I like that a lot. Who are some of the San Diego current practitioners of the Twinser?
Stu Kenson is sort of the main one.
And Stu, man, it's so funny how masters, and I would put him in that class, in my experience, I don't know if it's an open book. I don't want people to be blowing up Stu, but he shared, I asked him, someone wanted a Twinser from me, and I was like, Stu, could you hook me up? And he gave me the dimensions. Thank you, Stu. I mean, so cool. But just that idea of like sharing the knowledge to sort of get it out to the open source, I guess, I try and share that to the extent that I can, if people ask me about things. But so Stu is on it, and there's a nucleus of guys, I think, that probably he connects to,
Yeah, I Stu could be better teaching us here, but obviously you mentioned Will Jobson's the guy. At some point, Will was down in San Diego. Stu was working with Rusty. Of course, they had that C5 project, which was basically like, let's take this Twinser and let's do some more fun stuff with it. So there is a line from Will, which Will was in Santa Cruz. Somehow he got down here. I think Rusty just reached out to Will and said, hey, come down here and show me what you know. Now, again, this might be false history that you and I are riffing on. This is how I think it happened. It's been told to me, but I don't have it written down anywhere. But anyway, that's, I think, where Stu's lineage is, which is where you were going.
Yeah. 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 Thanks for clarifying that. That is where I was going. Yeah. Honestly, for me, I need to get my head around the Twinser a little bit more experientially. I agree with you in principle. I think that that would be the logical next step, and it does take that sort of like spontaneous combustion out. One thing that I found though, to get back to the round pin twin channel bottom, I've had these moments where, like in the apex of a top turn, it's sort of like, it's got, my read on what's happening is it's kind of the rails are kind of straighter coming into the round pin, and with the channels and the bigger twin fins, it's like a lot of torque, and it like hits the apex of the turn and then bucks, and it doesn't really throw you off, but it's not what you're trying to do. And so you kind of go, you know, and then sort of recover. And then when you're in recovery mode, even if it's a minor thing, it's just a hiccup, you want it to be seamless. One thing I've found helps with that though is smaller fins, which kind of dovetails to you know, channel bottom knowledge with you know, Alan Byrne and Dale Wilson to this day. AB made and Dale Wilson makes the fins on a traditional Gold Coast channel bottom are smaller because there's some stuff going on with the channels. So there's that. I've been like, well, since doing this mid-length, it's totally tongue-in-cheek, but this mid-length for black belt, which I'm really excited about, like my experience, mid-length for black belts. And I built the thing for those days that I was describing at Rincon and C Street here. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the mid-length for black belt. High tide, offshore wind, surface tension. It would be like a Cardiff Reef moment, would be like that too. You have something you can paddle, because your shortboard is not getting the job done. It's a 2 foot wave and you're a grown man or woman. And but there's texture and surface tension. And so you drop in and you get that, like that Duka Hanamoko gonna like, hey Nalu, you're surfing. And then you panel over and drive just with what's available. You drive. And so that channel array grabs the water and like gives a little spice to what would otherwise be kind of a fun board moment. Stand up, dad your way back to the beach. And so it gives you a little spice. That was the intention. Totally checked the box. I was invited by my buddies in Maine at Maine Surfers Union to come back for a hurricane swell this September. And we ended up, you know, over the hill and through the woods to grandmother's house, like way the hell and gone someplace. I wouldn't even be able to get there. I don't know where it was, but it was 8 to 10 feet, like that Rincon wave, and just going. And I had the mid-length for black belt, and I'm like, well, I guess I'm going surfing. That board with those channels and that design and that Smith Parrish fin was just like, give me more. It was like so solid underfoot. It felt so good. And I was like, man, I love this board. And I was like exclusively riding that board, which is like pretty much polar opposite to the Twinser high performance thing. But back to that often 2 to 3 foot morning scenario, maybe the Twinser is not the board for that either. It's like low tide honing on the reef is the Twinser moment, right? But that said, for me, performance surfing, and you see the air quotes, I'm really excited. And I've been on this quest. The reason I started the reason I started surfing was because I love surfing. But the reason I started shaping was because in 1995, I had been riding thrusters for a long time and came through the NSSA program. And I remember distinctly, I was in college at Santa Cruz, and I remember distinctly standing up on a wave and realizing that I was bored with what I was doing. I was like, man, I've been doing this since I was 12 years old. I've been trying to win my heat on my thruster in every single surf since I was 12 years old. This is boring. And then even more so, I didn't have the connections I had growing up in Newport. Pouch was making boards for me, and Mike Lytle. And so I was like, whew, those guys were great. And especially, of course, Greg Pouch. But up in Santa Cruz, I was just another transplant. And the boards, Flea and Barney and all those guys were riding. That just wasn't for me. And I wasn't trying to do airs. I started surfing in, 1978. And so I was informed by that core and like that early Newport thing. Well, early for me. Sorry, I kind of lost the thread there for a second.
That's
but
okay. Yeah.
So up there, this thin little boards, wasn't into it. And another little piece of the puzzle for me was I was in the Philippines when I was in the Navy, and on weekends I would just get a knapsack and just go and I'd just look at the map and go, there's got to be surf here in this town. And they've got, little jeepneys and buses, and I would just go out to the countryside. And I found this place. It's been so long, I can't remember where it was, but it was about a 3-hour bus ride from the U.S. Navy base. And I show up on the beach, and I look down the beach, and there's a surfboard in the sand on this white sand beach, jungle kind of point. And I'm like, oh my God. I had flippers. I didn't have a board at the moment. And it turns out it's this Pee-wee expat guy doing bamboo furniture, and he had a Brothers Nielsen single fin. And he was just such a surfer, so much aloha. He's like, yeah, mate, go surfing. Here, take this thing, and it felt so good. And then we ended up being friends, and I would connect with him on the weekends, and kind of badgered him over time. And I was like, can I buy that board from you, man? I love that thing. And he's like, yeah, all right. So he sold it to me. So I had this, it was something Michael Peterson would have ridden, like brewer style rails and just single fin. And so I had that board, and I had these McCoys, these Greg Pouches from circa 89, really nice rails, nice round pin thrusters. But all the boards were starting to age. And the circa 1977 single fin Brothers Nielsen was just a classic board that got stolen from me. But somewhere between those two, that was the surfing vision. That's what I started to try and shape. So I started to make short single fins, and truth be told, they didn't work very well. They just didn't. The ones at 7.2 worked really well, but it's kind of Billy Hamilton style, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it's a more upright, flowing style of surfing, which I really love. It's only now that I feel like my ability to shape a surfboard is, and just kind of what I've learned in all this time shaping is, I'm making this 7.2, and it's got a little sprinkling of what I've learned from that mid-length from black belt, a sprinkling of what I learned from early 80s design, just like more surface area, is what that boils down to. And just what I've learned in, I don't know, the channel bombs. Anyway, I'll spit it out. I'm making these 7.2s, 13.5-inch nose. So it's not a full, it's a bit of a pulled nose. They're 7.2, so they can absorb this width, which is 21 3/4, which is wide. And then it comes back to 14 1/4 in the tail. But at 7.2, that 21 3/4 doesn't look ridiculous like it would look maybe on a 6.2. And also I'm like almost 6'4". And the rails aren't super. I did one with like super brewer rails, and I don't like it. I don't know who the rail would be. Maybe more Pavel, but not like Speedy Dialer, not like that. But it's just, they're kind of down, but they're not down railers. Anyway, long story long, man, this thing feels unreal. Like and it's an 8 channel, like the mid-length for black belt. And I think what happens with the 8 channels is there's so much corrugation, and they're deep channels that the Glassers love me. That there's enough lift and drive. Chuck Ames, how fortunate am I, based on a conversation, made a fin for this board. I was telling him what I was feeling with a combination of the Smith Parish and actually a Channel Islands spicy, they called it, that they made for one of their mid-lengths that was pretty good, but not quite it for what I'm doing. And then the Smith Parish is good in the mid-length for black belt, but not in this more performance thing. So Chuck makes this, like, I should just go get the board and show it to you. It's out in the car. Like high aspect ratio. It's like, oh my God, it really works. And so you can get the speed and flow. I'm on a 7.2, and I mean, anyway, like full rail turns and like full drive. And to me, it's like Thornton Philander, or that style, like, like that.
You're pulling out some deep. That was a deep call right there. That was a deep call.
You know it. Look it up, youth.
I want to say Lagundri Bay.
And I love that, like that boxy stance, which I don't have. Because I'm so long and kind of lanky, I sort of do this praying mantis thing to pull it all in. But on a bigger wave, I like to like stand upright, like a little bit. I've really come to appreciate that Hawaiian bully boy style, like Eddie Aikau, that Jeff Devine photo of Eddie at sunset. That moment, I just look at that, I'm like, man, I want that stance. And I used to be like all scrappy, like, oh, I want to be like Curran and Shane Horan, like that style. And I was kind of honestly like less into that whole, like, the Hawaiian thing didn't resonate with me. It resonates with me heavily now. I'm just, fortunately, I'm up,
Let me ask you this. As you may know, we're going to be honoring Bob McTavish this year in the Icons of Foam tribute to the Masters, the shape off that we do every year at the BoardRoom Show. Do you know Bob? Have you met Bob? What do you think about, what do you know about Bob McTavish?
I don't know Bob, and I hold him in the highest regard. I've never had the good fortune to meet him. But I feel some connection with him because, and it's like totally distant, and I'll give my quick take on Bob McTavish, but the connection I feel is, I've gotten to know Matt Moore, in Carpinteria, another great shaper and surfer, and his son Ryan Moore is one of those guys who just like, first of all, there's like 300 people out here, and you're just sitting there in your little Zen bubble, and he makes the subtlest move, and all of a sudden he's on the wave of the day, and you're like, what? I didn't even see the damn thing coming, and if it did, I wouldn't have been in this spot, but he is, and he's such a beautiful surfer, and cool dude all the way around. And so his dad, I kind of talk to him whenever I get a chance, and I was at his place, and I didn't realize that McTavish tested the V bottoms at Rincon and built them.
Maury Pope.
Do you know that he was down the street literally from Matt, and that had a big influence on Matt. And Matt watched him and the Wilderness guys build the V bottoms and go down to Rincon and run them. And I think that was like maybe 13, like Grom status, but by the time he was in high school, but he got, as it turns out, he was really influenced by just witnessing that, but he went more into the pintail sort of a brewer style minigun thing, which he does masterfully. And I think those boards still, like on certain waves and certain times, you bust out the 711 pintail and get your surfing on, that pure line kind of thing. But I have this thing that I call, again, totally tongue in cheek and inserting myself in surf history, that in a way, like, I'm just a guy who really likes surfing. I'm not on the level of Joe Quigg, obviously, or McTavish, but in homage to those guys, I have this board that I do that I call the Malibu Sam. I had a more complicated name, but someone on Instagram communicated. He goes, just call it Malibu Sam. And what I mean by that, the Joe Quigg is the Malibu chip nose. It's like that 1950s kind of full but pulled. It's pretty sexy. And then it's a 17-inch tail with a 12-inch tail block and a sort of like elliptical tail and a big old like L flex, 10-inch L flex V bottom. And it's 9 feet long and it's 23 inches wide. So it's quite rectangular. Not rectangular, it's all curves, but you get what I'm saying. And you just panel that thing and thin rails. And so I'm kind of imagining Magic Sam on the back end with a Malibu chip on the front end. And but yeah, and then McTavish, the V bottom, and you know what he did at Honolulu Bay was really rad. And so that's going to be so exciting to see at the BoardRoom show.
Who are some guys? Last year in the Best in Show competition, sort of an an absolutely under the radar blue collar worker bee type of shaper from San Luis Obispo named Shea Soma won the entire Best in Show. And it was the most crowded field of entries into Best in Show we've ever had. There were some incredible boards. And I was so stoked that Shea won because like I said, he's not like this. He's not a guy that's throwing thousands of dollars into a marketing program. You know what I mean? Who are some of the other guys like Shea and yourself who are sort of understated shapers that are worthy shapers for the icons of fun? By the way, I don't select the shapers. Let me make one thing perfectly clear. I do not select the shapers for the icons of foam. I never have. It's always done by the honoree. In this case, Bob McTavish will be selecting the shapers.
Wow.
So, but I'm just wondering if there's some guys that fall into that sort of understated underground shapers that are worthy of being involved. And I consider you amongst that group.
Yeah. Thank you so much. That's really nice. I really appreciate it. I endeavor to really concentrate. I do the best I can, and show up and concentrate and really, I love making surfboards and I really want to make them the best that I can. And use the influences and the things that have stoked me and kind of blend them with some level of elegance into the thing that I'm doing. But enough about me. So Shea's awesome. Shane Stoneman's better known and has his place in surfing, rightfully, well deserved. He's won for sure. And a guy who I shape with at Ryan Lovelace's place. Well, Ryan is also well known, and man, he has worked so hard, Ryan Lovelace, and really concentrated on his thing. And I mean, he's masterful at what he makes, but a guy who's with us over there, Michael Arenal, he's a Hobie shaper. Well, he's the winner of last year's Icons of Foam, but I wonder if
he'll be in it. He's the defending champion. He's an incredible shaper.
I was so stoked. You know what I said to him? Because we shaped next to each other. I said, hey man, don't go into this like, oh my God, like I get to be I said, you could win this thing. You have the skill, you can do it. Just don't think about anything else but the work in front of you, something like that, a little pep talk. And he won it, not me, but I just felt so good that I had said that and he won it. I freaked out when he won. I was really, so obviously, I mean, don't need me to say it. He's obviously won. There's a guy in Ventura who I got to know through Jeff Hull, Dustin Baker. And he has a label called Jupiter Surfcraft. and he's gnarly because his shapes are really nice and good. And he glasses, and he's like a high level glasser, like sander, color guy. I mean, so it's pretty impressive. I'm impressed by what he does. And
Hey, can you hold on for just a sec?
sure.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, but two other guys.
Yeah.
My good friend in Carpinteria and one of the cart boys, aka Matt Moore, who's just like, what? Where did that wave come from? Spencer Davis, insane shaper. He made Connor Coffin a pipeline board that he got an insane second reef wave on. So Spencer Davis is unreal. And also a young fella up in Santa Cruz, a friend of mine, Jonah Reimers, and he's got the Joey Thomas connection. He's good friends with Richard Schmidt's son, Richie Schmidt, and he's got the JT connection and some Jobson influence, and he is making these boards that are very much in that vein you're talking about. Twinser influence. I don't know if he's ready to let the cat out of the bag, so I don't want to say too much.
Yeah.
But got these plan shapes. It's all about like this seamlessness, short, but it's kind of the opposite of what I do. I'm going longer, single fin channel bottoms, like, you know, circa 77. Cole Smith is my patron saint. Enough on that for the moment. But he's doing the opposite, the kind of shorter, narrower noses, wider hips, held together with a very unique fin array. We're going to, mark my words, Jonah Reimers. He's coming on. He's awesome.
All right, cool, good. I mentioned that you know, in some regards, the surfboard game has become sort of a marketing game more than actual craftsmanship.
Yeah.
There's the stab in the dark competition, which I think is real. I love all the things that Stab does with surfboards in the surfboard space. There's also the electric surfboard acid test. Excuse me. What are your thoughts on the surfboard game being the marketing game? How much of it is the marketing game? Is the surfboard game actually 75% marketing these days?
I wonder. I definitely wonder about that. And I try not to like lose sleep over it because, you know, it's like, what are the things you can control? You know, I can't control whether anyone does. I think there's definitely a huge aspect of that. And there's always the moment, like on the beach, when you see the guy with the board and it makes you wonder what was the thought process that led to this moment, or what was the apparatus that put the guy in that wetsuit with that board, with that GoPro mount on the nose. The whole kit, you know, you're like, what goes on here? You know, what is this? You know, not to mention the guy, and I don't know why, like anybody can ride anything, and it's not my call. But on a classic pumping day to paddle out on a Rasta colored wave storm is like, I can't go there. I cannot accept that. But anyway, back to the marketing game. I think it's gnarly. There was two other guys I wanted to add to the list here in this area. They're up by UC Santa Barbara. They're Goleta guys. Jeff Sabota, who's pretty well known, and Joseph Yee. Both of those guys, masterful shapers. And again, like Dustin, master shapers, master glassers, and sanders. They've got the whole kit, and amazing surfers too. But Jeff Sabota himself, you know, his board ended up referenced on the cover of Surfing Magazine, RIP, the Surfer's Journal. That offshore wind, the guy's taking off on a sliver of fin. That's another buddy of mine, Simon Murdoch, who's, you know, kind of one of our core guys up here. He's so stylish and so gnarly, just like hungry for the fall line. He's awesome. But Jeff Sabota said to a buddy of mine, he goes, we were all kind of like tripping out on these boards that are coming out. We're like, whoa, how is this happening? And he's like, man, it's a popularity contest. That's all it is, And if that's the case, I guess I'm doing all right, because that wave that I got a lot of attention, and my Instagram's going, and I try and be, I don't want to be a lunatic, I want to be like, I think I'm getting to know myself, still getting to know myself. And I think we're in a process of evolving, but I want to be who God intends for me to be. And so I hope that I represent myself in my truth, if not the truth. You know what I mean? Like so I do my bod report on the gram, right? And sometimes I'm like, man, am I just doing this like silly song and dance thing? A little bit, but me, that's kind of my personality. I think I'm trying, like, what am I doing when I do that? Well, I'm trying to show these surfboard designs that I'm excited about. I think I probably spend a little bit too much time being concerned how the other person feels, and like wanting to make everyone feel okay. Like that's kind of my own like psychological trip out. But and I think that comes out in my personality. I'm like the nice guy, and that's kind of a defensive setting, actually, if I'm going to be real.
Yeah. No, it's good. It's good. What are your, we spoke a little bit earlier about the surfboard du jour, and we kind of went off on a tangent, but what I was trying to get at is, what do you think is the next surfboard du jour? What's the board that these guys that are the marketing guys in the surfboard game, what's the board we're going to see kind of ubiquitously across the field, much in the same way that we have seen the twin fin round pin, the mid-length twin fin round pin?
Yeah.
What do you think that board is? What is that board?
I wonder. My short answer is that I'm drawing a blank. I don't feel strongly enough about any one sort of trend or like direction to be able to articulate what I think it'll be 6 months, a year and a half, 3 years from now. That said, I hope whatever it is grounded in function, because we've gone down some, in my opinion, some paths that have held us back. I think surfing for all of us I don't think I'm a civilian. I'm in the Corps Army. I'm enlisted in the Corps Army. Maybe I've even got a commission. I'm a commissioned officer. But for the civilians, they were led astray, I'm sorry, by Kelly Slater's board. And I'm not taking a damn thing away from the GOAT when I say that. And Tom Curran, I was trying to, show Tom Curran my core surf opinion one time. I was like, yeah, thinking I was talking to a sympathetic ear. I'm telling Tommy, I'm like, yeah, those boards in the 90s, all chipped out and thin, too narrow. And that wasn't for me. I'm a flow guy, kind of in the word I didn't say. Like you, Tommy, guys like us. And Tom Curran, he kind of waits a beat. He's like, yeah, but those boards let us ride deeper in the barrel than we ever had before. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know shit, do I?
Classic.
Oh, no. And obviously, Kelly Slater can ride them, and the waves that Kelly Slater rode him in, it all makes sense. He's gone through some evolutions in his surfboard design too. So like, I'm not trying to, throw shade on the king.
Yeah.
That said, I'll throw a little shade. Do we really need wave pools and Thailand manufactured surfboards? I don't think so.
Yeah.
We have that we could have that conversation. I'm more on the Windleberry side of things, if you know what I mean. I feel like that's a future tech thing that is like nature replacement, and I don't like it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm the guy who's gonna like weed this hillside with a hand cutting thing. But that is better. That's better than the weed whipper. The weed whipper is loud. The weed whipper spews gas fumes all over the place. I'm up there cutting the weeds in a deep meditation. I'm riding a single fin, baby, with channels.
All right. Well, look, I mean, we've said a lot, and I feel like that was like the exclamation point on the interview right there. That was epic. That was great. So, Christian Beamish, thanks. It's always fun. You're a friend of mine. It's always fun to catch up with you and chat with you. And I look forward to talking to you soon in the near future. I appreciate you coming on the podcast this morning.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Talk to you soon.
Okay, buddy.
Stay young, keep your wheels in motion. You got everything that you need. Stay young with your rock and rollin'. All the best things in life are free.